Hello, I'm Setzuko, and in this video I'm going to be covering the core add-ons that I use to create the UI that you're seeing in front of you. I've got some new changes since the last UI video that I created, so if you've seen that one, there is some new stuff in here, and if you haven't, then this is all going to be new to you. What I'm going to do is go add-on by add-on, break down what each one of them does and how it fits into the overall scheme of the UI that I've created. I'm not going to be going super in detail for any of these add-ons. A lot of these I'll be making in-depth video guides for later on, but if you do come up with any questions or you're wondering about how I configured a particular add-on or anything like that, feel free to put that in the comments section below. Also, in the description below, I'm going to have timestamps for the various add-ons in case you want to reference them again later. All right, so the first thing that I want to do is I want to show you the kind of three states that this UI has. The first one is the one that you're seeing here, and this is out of combat and in a rested area. So basically I've got my quest log up here, my minimap, my little minimap buttons, kind of faded out health bar here for my character, my mini menu here, and then also a little XP bar down at the bottom. When I leave a rested area, but am not in combat, the main thing that happens here is my little micro menu goes away, so it's no longer taking up a part of the screen. Now, my goal with creating a UI like this is I want to have as little unnecessary clutter on my screen as possible so that I can really enjoy the views of the game. As you can see here, I barely have anything on the screen, and even the stuff that I have is still kind of faded out for the most part so I can see through it aside from the minimap. So the final state that is here for the UI setup is the in combat setup. So I'm going to jump into combat real quick. And you're just going to see that basically once I get in combat, I have some different information popping up here. I've got some skills around me, and then I've also got health bars for the enemies. All right, so let's head back over to town, and we will take a look at what all goes into creating this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do here is talk about three add-ons that are kind of core to this that don't really do anything to change the UI themselves, but they're just there to kind of assist and help out. The first of those is going to be Add-on Control Panel. All this does is give you more advanced options and a better way to organize and sort your add-ons, which is what you're seeing here. This is the control panel. It's a little bit different. It lets you create sets and different things like that. I really just use it because it's more streamlined and convenient than the default window. The second one is Advanced Interface Options, and this will give you more things that you can check when you go into your interface options in the menu. So if you head in here to Interface and you start going through, there are going to be more options in here than what's there by default. It kind of unhides some stuff that Blizzard hides. And then the last add-on that I wanted to touch on here is going to be eAlign. eAlign is basically just an alignment tool. You go in and you type /align. It pops up a grid on your screen, and this is really handy for helping you line things up and just get everything exactly where you want it to be. So once you're done, you just type /align again, and it goes away. And it doesn't really affect anything that's going on. You still move things, click things, fight, everything. It's just kind of an overlay on the screen, but it does help to make the UI nicer and neater. All right, when I start creating a UI, one of the first things I like to do is get my quest log out of the way because it takes up so much room on the screen. And I use an add-on called Kaliel's Tracker, which you can see right here. And I've been using this for years now. It's definitely my favorite quest log alternative that I've found. You could set it up over here. It's got filtering. You could set a maximum height for it, and then it has a scroll bar so you can scroll through. This is just really great for getting a huge quest log under control, and I use this all the time. So I'll often just start by loading up Kaliel's, getting the settings exactly how I want it, and just kind of taking all that text clutter and just moving it away and into its own little spot so that I can then mess with the rest of the UI. The next thing that I like to do is mess with my minimap. Now, I've used a lot of minimap add-ons in the past. The one that I'm currently using by far has been my favorite. It's just called BasicMinimap. It's really simple. It's really to the point. It looks really clean and nice. You can change the size of it. You can make it round or square. You can change the border color to match the rest of your UI. When I'm creating my UI setups, I really like to use class colors as the borders and things like that. If possible, just to kind of give some extra class flavor to the UI itself. So you can see in Kaliel's, I have the warrior color up here at the top. For my Minimap, I have the warrior border color, and you're going to see more of the warrior color kind of pop up throughout this video because I just like to use that class stuff. It gives a little variance between the UI on my different characters while also maintaining a good amount of consistency throughout, because the only thing that really changes are a few colors. The next thing I like to set up is a really just simple, easy change, and that is I like to install this add-on called Aurora. So Aurora, all it does is it lets you change the theme of all of your panels. So if you look at my character panel here, I have like this cool kind of semi-transparent black background color, and then I've got a cool, background behind my character here, and this will just make all of your panels, like if we look at the spell book, if we look at the talents, like they all match this theme. It's a really simple add-on that you can use to change what those panels look like without having to install something as like heavy as like LVUI or something like that. Because I like Aurora so much, I usually theme the rest of my UI around what those panels look like. That's why my quest log kind of looks the same. If you look at it, they're pretty similar. So I like to keep everything kind of that same semi-transparent, clean lines, black background sort of look. It helps to also highlight the class color when you start incorporating that in as well, which I think is really cool. The next thing I like to do is get rid of the unnecessary stuff that's on my screen, and I use two different add-ons to do that. The first one is called Immersive, and basically what Immersive will do is it will automatically hide different elements of the Blizzard UI. So for example, if we were to go down here and let's take a look at the main hotbar. So I can set this up so that the main hotbar will automatically hide itself. And there are a couple different modes you can use. You can use always hidden, so it'll never show itself. You can do conditional any or conditional all. And then you can set conditions over here as well. So let's say, for example, you wanted to hide your main hotbar when you were out of combat so you could get these nice, beautiful views, but you wanted it to be back once you were in combat. Well, all you have to do is check this box, set your mode to conditional any or all, depending on which one you want to use, and then you can check in combat. So what this will do, if I were to change this to one of the conditionals, is it'll say, oh, you're in combat, show the main hotbar. As soon as you're out of combat, fade out the main hotbar, make it invisible. So this is a good way to have a lot of control over what you want to show and not show and when. The other add-on that I use is called MoveAnything. Now what MoveAnything will do is it will let you move elements of the UI to wherever you want. So for example, one of the things I used it for is to take my micro bar, which is normally here in the bottom corner, and move it over here. And I did that because I like to pop up my bags and just have my bags in the corner without the additional menus there. I also used it to hide completely the little bag bar as well. I never use the bag bar. I don't need it on my screen. So with MoveAnything, you can do basically those two things. You can move stuff around and you can totally hide it. There aren't a lot of conditionals with MoveAnything, so if you do have something where you want to hide it sometimes, but not all the time, Immersive is the add-on to use for that. The next thing that I do is I customize my bags, and there are all kinds of add-ons out there for you to use. The one that I use changes every 6 months or so because I decide I want features and then later I don't want them and I want something simple or I want something complex. In this particular case, the add-on that I'm using is called Baud Bag right here. And it's pretty simple. It doesn't have a whole lot of options, but it will let you combine bags as you want and separate them out. So this is my total inventory, but I'm able to have a bunch of bags combined into a big inventory bag, but also keep some of those bags separate. So I kind of like that because instead of just having one big bag, which a lot of add-ons do and I've used in the past before, I like to have a little bit of separation. You can also kind of assign things to these bags as well, but it's not overly complicated. I've used some add-ons in the past that have been super complicated. They offer a lot more customization, but I just don't care that much. It's a lot more work and fiddling with to get it to work right. This is simple, straightforward, and I can theme it to match the rest of my UI, so it does the trick. After the bags, then I start to get into where I just add a little like quality of life convenience add-ons before I get into the real meat and potatoes of changing the UI. And the first one that I use is called CursorTrail. If I'm in combat, it's going to show this little trail around my cursor, which you can see here. And all that does is it helps me make sure that if there are a million things going on, I don't lose my cursor in combat. That's happened to me quite a bit, and this just kind of helps me prevent that from happening. So that was CursorTrail. The next thing that I do is Experiencer. Experiencer is the bar you can see down here at the bottom of the screen. It's kind of behind me, but you can kind of see a little bit of the brown over here, and then the rest of this is like the unfilled portion of the experience bar. This is really cool. You can right click on it and it gives you a bunch of different options. You can split this into 3 different bars. As you can see here, these are tracking different things. I just currently have it to 1 for the reputation that I'm trying to earn. But this is really nice when you're leveling up. It's also just, it kind of gets the XP bar out of the way, keeps it simple, adds a little bit of that class color in as well, and lets you do a couple of customizable things with it. The next add-on is Minimap Button Frame, and basically what this does is it puts these little icons over here. It takes all the stuff that would normally be around your minimap and lets you put it into a little menu here that you can hide or unhide. I like this because I like to keep my minimap clean and focused without all those icons cluttering it up, and this basically just gives you a place to put all that stuff so that it looks nice, neat, and organized. You can also customize what the icons look like, the shape, the color, all that kind of good stuff. The next add-on is Mount Journal Enhanced, and this is something I've been using for a long time as well. Basically, this just takes the Mount Journal and gives you a lot more filtering options, so you can filter by sources, type, faction, family. If you're like, hey, I really want a bat mount, then you can sort through your collection and just look for bat mounts. It also lets you set favorite mounts per character, which is something I really like because I use the summon random mount function to call up mounts when I'm on different characters. And some characters I like to have certain mounts for, and some I like to have other mounts for. So this allows me to just kind of chuck everything into a favorite mounts thing, have it set per character, and then not have to worry about summoning Pony on my undead looking warrior. The next add-on is Prat. Prat is one of many different chat add-ons that are available out there. I like it. It's straightforward, simple, lets me customize the stuff that I want to, has a bunch of features I don't even use, but it gets the job done. Basically, when it comes to a chat add-on, you just got to find the one that does the stuff that you want it to do. I don't need anything fancy. I just need to be able to whisper people and enter commands and talk and party, and that's about it. But there are all kinds of add-ons out there that let you play mini games while you're just hanging around talking to people in chat and stuff like that. The one I use though is Prat, and it gets the job done for me. The next add-on is called Storyline. Now, there are a number of add-ons out here that do kind of what Storyline does, and some of them have more features and they're even fancier. The thing about Storyline is it does what it does and takes very little resources to do it, which is why I like it. And basically all it does is changes the chat window. So I get this kind of cool pop-up over here with animated figures. I can use hotkeys, so the spacebar will auto-advance the dialogue, and then I can also use numbers on the keypad to access the dialogue options as well, which means I don't have to click up here or, that kind of stuff. And with Storyline, you can put the window wherever you want. I put it in the upper left because usually I don't have much going on there during the times when I am talking to NPCs, and it also keeps the rest of my view pretty open and lets me see all the stuff kind of around my character, so I like to put it there, but you can easily drag it around and put it somewhere else. There are options for speed of dialogue and all kinds of stuff here. This one I really like. It's lightweight. It does what I want it to do. If you're someone who's really into the story, there are a couple of other add-ons out there. There's Immersion, and I forget what the other one is, but I'll try to link it in the pinned comment below. That give you even more options and even more things that you can do to make the story of WoW even more immersive. And then the final sort of convenience add-on that I have is just World Quest Lists. There are a ton of add-ons like this, and this just makes world quests easier to decipher and makes it easier to find what you want. This puts markers on the map. It gives me a list over here of the quest name, the rewards, the faction it's for, the time left. You can add all sorts of extra options here. You can customize the size of this. You can have the window outside, inside. It's just a really great add-on for organizing your world quests, and I definitely recommend, even if you don't take world quest lists, that you get one of the ones that's out there. There's a bunch of them out there for you to choose from. All right, so now we've got the basic elements of the UI put together. A lot of stuff moved out of the way, and a lot of our convenience stuff is activated. So now we're going to get into the real kind of heavy-duty work of changing the UI. We're going to start off by modifying our tooltips, and I do this with TinyTooltip. It's my favorite add-on of this type that I have found, and this just modifies your tooltip so that, for example, I have it so that the tooltip shows up at my cursor, so I don't have to hover over something and then look way down here in the corner. It'll show up here, and I can easily see who's who, what faction they are, if they are an enemy. Can hover over that, and that shows me what that is. Over here, I can see that's a sand stinger. Everything is kind of coordinated so that it works off of where my mouse is at. And that just makes everything a lot smoother, makes it faster for you to quickly analyze what's going on around you. And I also have it set so that if I'm in combat, the tooltip does go back down into the corner, because that way I don't have these big tooltip windows in my way when I'm trying to fight. So that's something you can do with this. You can customize this. They even have an option where when you hover over something, it shows the 3D model of that thing above the tooltip. Like, there's a ton of options in here, but I keep things really simple, really basic. I just want to show stuff near my cursor. I want to have it colored based on whether it's hostile or not, or what class it is. And I want it to give me the basic information, the level, what it is, what the name is. All right, the next thing to set up are the nameplates. So nameplates are the things above the enemies that show their health. There are these things here. And there are a bunch of different add-ons you can use for this. I've used various add-ons over time depending on how much customization I want to be able to have. Right now I'm using NeatPlates. It's kind of a middle ground between overwhelming complexity and customization and simple with not a lot of options. It's somewhere in the middle, and for me that kind of does the trick right now because I want to have a little bit more control over what I see and when, but I also don't want to have to sift through like 80 options per thing that I can do in order to figure out what I want and how I want it to work. If you want something a little bit simpler, then you can look at N plates, the letter N plates. If you want something a little more complicated, then you can look at Plater. There are some other options out there too. Those aren't the only ones available. If you want something middle of the road like me, then NeatPlates is where it's at. The next add-on is going to be shadowed unit frames. Now, this is just changing your frames for like your character health, your party health, your raid health. That's what you see right here. This is my shadowed unit frames for my character. Now, I use this because it's a lot easier than trying to set up the health bar and all that other kind of stuff with WeakAuras, which we'll get to later. You can do that, but this takes me way less time than trying to set that up. It does everything I want. It's customizable. I can make it look good. I can make it match my UI. If I type shadowed unit frames here and I unlock the frames, you can see kind of where the setup is. This is super simple. It's just drag and drop whatever you want, and then you can go in within each of the different options. You could change all kinds of settings. I keep things fairly clean. I'm not often doing content that's so difficult that I need to know all the buffs that are on my enemies or all the buffs and debuffs that are on myself. And even if I do, I can set up other alerts for that through WeakAuras instead. So I try to keep my frames pretty simple. So that's shadowed unit frames. There are a lot of options out there for unit frames as well, but this is the one I like, and I recommend it. I've been using it for a long time now, and it's fantastic. It's great. So at this point, we basically have our UI put together. There's just two things left, and they're the biggest, bulkiest two things to do when it comes to setting up a UI. Now, one of them, I imagine most of you will not do. and you'll do something different. And that is setting up your action bars. So as you can see, I don't have any action bars here. When I go into combat, I still don't have any action bars. And that's because I use an add-on called OPie. I've been using it for years now, and I use that as a replacement for my action bar. But it's kind of weird. I do it because I have carpal tunnel and nerve problems and everything else, and it's just been a better way for me to play the game instead of having to try and do a lot of stuff like Shift 8 and, you know, crazy stuff like that on the keyboard, which plenty of people are obviously capable of doing. For me, using OPie for my action bars has just been a fantastic, amazing way for me to set this up. Now, I'm not going to get really in depth into how to use OPie or set it up or anything like that. I have a different video that I'll link in the description below that you can check out if you want to know how I set this up. But I'm just going to show you what it does, and also mention that the other add-on that I add with this is OPie Mask and Mask. And all that does is let me change the way that the buttons look. So for me, OPie, or some people call it Circle Pie, it's one of the two. It's probably Circle Pie. Basically what this add-on lets you do is it lets you create rings that are accessed via a keybind. So for example, if I hold W, then you can see here I have a ring of abilities. And you can set this up various ways. I have it set up so that all I have to do is move my mouse towards an ability and let go of the keybind, and it will cast that ability. And this is used by many people to do things like put their professions into a single hotkey, so you can hit like the number 1 and it'll pull up all your professions, and you can just go, oh, I want to, I want to craft something, and hit this and that'll come up. It's also used for like raid markers, so you can click on something, hit one button, and have access to all the different raid markers. Not a lot of people use this the way that I do. I don't know of anyone who uses this the way I do that hasn't started using it this way because they watched one of my videos. So I actually use this for combat. And so I will jump in here. And as you can see, for me, this gets the job done. So I was able to attack and kill this enemy without having to click anything here on my action bars that don't exist. All my action bars are basically just built into my different button commands here. So you can see basically with one press of a button, I have multiple abilities right there waiting for me. And then it's just practice at that point. It's practice to get better at using it. If you're interested in, I highly recommend you try it out. I think it's really great. It takes more practice to do it as a healer, and it takes even more practice to do it on really difficult content. So I definitely wouldn't jump into using OPie and think that you're just going to have the hang of it right away. But if you practice and you get good at it, it's definitely a great alternative, especially if, like me, you have issues with carpal tunnel or anything like that, where having to have your hands and your fingers doing a lot of stuff all the time will bother you. This keeps it really simple. I have all of my abilities, every single ability that I could possibly want to use, bound to 6 keybinds total. And so that's awesome, fantastic, great add-on. Highly recommend it. Like I said, if you want to know how to set it up, I'll put a link to the video that I did for a tutorial in the description below, and you can check that out. All right, the final add-on here, the final piece of the pie is WeakAuras. Now, WeakAuras is a really popular add-on. It's also really overwhelming to a lot of people. I'll be making a tutorial video series about WeakAuras here pretty soon, but I just want to give you a quick overview of the kind of stuff that you can do with WeakAuras. And this isn't even like getting into the super complicated stuff that you can do. Basically, what I use WeakAuras for is I use it to tell me about important stuff that I need to know about, that I normally would look at my action bars for, or I'd look at my buffs, or I'd look for, procs or animations on the side of my character. All that kind of stuff I build into WeakAuras for a couple of reasons. One, I can arrange this stuff wherever I want to. 2, I can set up different conditionals for it as well. So for example, basically I have 4 different categories of abilities per class. So I have ASAP abilities, and these are abilities that I want to use right away. And these go over here, And when I'm able to use them, the icon shows up and it has this glowing border that says, hey dummy, use this ability. Then I have my warrior buffs, and this just shows me anytime I get one of the buffs that I want to know about that I have, then it'll show up here. And this is a replacement for showing the buffs up here in the corner. So when I have avatar, it'll show me, hey, you have avatar, and it'll count down, and once it's done, it'll go away. So this is the replacement for my buffs bar, and I like this because it's more organized, and I can just kind of customize it the way I want to. The next thing that I have are my cooldowns, and these are the abilities that I want to know that I have access to and I can use, but they're the ones that have long cooldowns. So for example, here I have Blade Storm, which is a ability that has a 1.5 minute cooldown. I have these set up over here, so it shows me that they're available. Then when I use them, it shows the cooldown here. So instead of seeing every single skill on my action bar, I only pay attention to the ones over here that are important, that have long cooldowns, that I want to be really paying attention to the cooldown for. Because for the rest of the abilities, I probably have a good idea of the timing and when they're going to come back and the rhythm, and I don't need to see that information cluttering my screen all the time. And then the last section that I have is just what I call the core section, and this is where I put abilities that I use pretty frequently and I want to know about as I'm doing stuff. So these could be my movement abilities like charge. This will let me see, okay, I'm in range and I have 2 charges of charge. That's something that what I don't want to have to do is hit my OPie key binding and go, oh, am I in range? Do I have 2 charges? I just want to be able to see that right here on my screen, but usually that's only 4 to 6 abilities on each individual character that I actually want that information for. Another example here is like Mortal Strike. I want to know, okay, do I have enough rage to use Mortal Strike? Yes, I do. So then I can look here and see that I have that. So it's kind of the same idea with the cooldowns, but this is for the kind of like core abilities I'm going to be using all the time. For example, something I don't have down here is I don't have execute, right? Because execute I don't need down here because I'm not using it all the time. And instead, what I did is I put execute into my ASAP thing. So when I am able to execute something, it's going to pop up over here with the big shiny glow and go, hey, execute something. So WeakAuras lets you do all kinds of stuff. It's really way too much for me to get into here. One of the other nifty things that it does is it lets you control when you see things. So for example, you don't see any of my WeakAuras stuff until I'm actually in combat, and then once I am in combat, then everything is seen. And you can see, like right now, I don't have any abilities that I could use that I should be using because they're all on cooldown. And it's just really neat, really awesome add-on, and I'll be covering it in depth here in the very near future. The basic tutorial guide should be out pretty soon. All right, so that's going to do it. That is the overview of the UI and how I create it. There are lots of other add-ons that I use just for fun, stuff that I use for transmog, stuff that I use for the auction house, stuff that I use for managing alts. But this is kind of the foundation of how my UI gets built. This is something that I've been creating and iterating on for years now. I used to use LVUI as just kind of a catch-all to do a lot of this stuff at once. And I definitely recommend if you don't want to get into, you know, really setting up a custom UI, you look at something like LVUI. But for me, I wanted something that didn't take as much resources, did just what I wanted it to do and not anything else. And I think that you can do that with more control by using individual add-ons instead of kind of a like one-stop shop add-on like LVUI. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. A lot of these add-ons I either have tutorials for already on the channel or they'll be coming up in the future. If you have questions though, just send them my way. I'll answer them as soon as I can instead of making you wait for a video. All right, before you go, I want to remind you to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be notified of when I put out new videos. And if you've been helped in any way by any of my videos, consider supporting the channel on patreon.com/Setsuko for even more content. For add-ons in particular in the future, I'll be including the import codes for a lot of my setups for my Patreon subscribers so that you can just download my configuration, hit the import button, and have it load up on your screen. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you're having fun in whatever it is that you're doing. And as always, I'll see you on the next video.